Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's wonderful webinar. I'm really delighted to be joined with some amazing speakers from around Australia. But first, let me introduce myself. My name is Michelle Maloney. I'm the National Convener and one of the co-directors of the Australian Earth Laws Alliance, or AILA. And in a moment, we're going to have our wonderful webinar called, I called it Integral Ecology, Faith and Environment, but it's really a focus on our interconnectedness and different perspectives that different people and their faith can bring and share about our connection to the living world. First, though, I'd like to acknowledge country. I acknowledge that I live, work and play on the beautiful lands of the Jinnaburra and Cubby peoples. I'm in a very special part of southeast Queensland, which is now known as Narangba, and it's a lovely place. The views from the hill up the back of us look out across the really beautiful Glasshouse Mountains. So I'd like to acknowledge that land was never ceded, that the entire continent has always been a beautiful patchwork quilt of different First Nations peoples caring for place and caring for each other. The work that AILA does is committed to acknowledging that land was never ceded, that it always has been and always will be Aboriginal land, but also more than that, we like to locate ourselves in this place of being good earthlings. We like to acknowledge that AILA and our sister organisations, Future Dreaming and the New Economy Network, are really committed to exploring the ideas around decolonising our thinking and feelings and really understanding what it means to be what Mary Graham, one of the elders I work with, what she would say is a good citizen or a good custodian of country. What does it mean to be deeply connected to place? So these are the themes that we're interested in inside AILA. And so when we acknowledge country, we also acknowledge the decolonial task ahead of us. I'm a descendant of some of the Irish convicts who were brought here as part of the British Empire. My grandmother would be ashamed that I would even mention that in a public place, but I am quite proud of the fact that my poor Irish ancestors were carted over here unwillingly, but turned into having a beautiful life on this continent. So perhaps just a moment for all of us to reflect on our past, our connections to place, and our present. And the topic that I am particularly excited by, what does our future hold? How do we work together through our love of place and our love of each other to build a much better governance system? So that's enough introduction from me. I would invite you all, if you wish, to pop into the chat where you are today, where you're joining us from, whose country you're on, how you're feeling, your favourite colour, anything really. It's nice to hear from you. But without further ado, I'm now going to just briefly mention who's going to be speaking with us today, and then I'll hand over to our speakers. So first, we've got, our wonderful coordinator of today's webinar is LANYON, and she's the volunteer coordinator of the Faith Ecology Network, and has done some amazing work. And she and I have been in connection with each other and collaborated wherever possible for many years. And today our speakers will be Sue Martin, who is passionate about loving the earth and seeking justice for earth. She's working with the Faith Ecology Network, and her talk is about responding to Laudato Si and many other good things. Our next speaker will be David Lowe, who's a member of the Australian Native Bee Association, who I think anyone who is a member of the Australian Bee Association has my heart, and is also from the North Shore Temple Emmanuel, a progressive Jewish synagogue. So I can't wait to hear what David has to share today. And Jessica Yule is currently managing the Brahma Kumaris Blue Mountains Retreat Centre at Laura, and she leads retreats and meditation classes. She's long been involved in interfaith activities and in the Blue Mountains and bush generation. And Leisha Barrett is a social ecologist and the mission formation and ecological animator at the Catholic Mission. I think that's a fantastic title, ecological animator. So I am really looking forward to our talks today. We'll have a nice relaxing yarn. So I'd like to invite Sue to speak with us first. Thank you so much, Sue.
And thank you, Michelle. So I'll just share screen and hope that.
And hope.
And hope, yes. So here we go. There we go. Is that up? Fantastic. So I share with you Sue Martin. I do actually work for the Jesuits. So sharing that with you all. I'm here on Darug land in Western Sydney, and my waters flow to the mighty Darubbin. I am sharing a story today from CRA, and this story, Sally Neves, you'll see a bit later in a beautiful video. She and I co-chair the Ecology Alliance Committee, and that in itself is about what this is all about: collaboration, interconnectedness, caring for country. But I also do want to acknowledge that for me, being part of the Faith and Ecology Network, we are a network of networks. And so the stories today will be that, a network of networks. So today, the story to start our journey of integral ecology is called Slow the Flow. And it's from the Sisters of Mercy in ISMA and PNG. So we as integral ecologists, I know this is a bit of a jargon word, and I just share quickly. It is to be scientifically literate, ethically grounded, spiritually alive, and motivated to act. And so if you can have a sense of integral ecology with that in mind, that would be good. So just sharing a little bit about Slow the Flow, and it has been a response to the climate disruption that happened last year in Yagara when a rain bomb came along and totally disaster in the township of Yagara. And we do pay our respects for those that were so incredibly impacted. But for us as the Ecology Alliance Committee, and just us as Laudato Si support for our congregation, so Jesuit, Mercy, Good Samaritan, all the those that are on a journey of thinking about our Laudato Si action plans, having this project start is just an amazing way to connect with community and to connect with country, and to look at landscape on a larger scale than the place that we sometimes do in, just in parish or place. So it is thinking about Bathurst Diocese as the scale, and that connection to Wurundjeri country that First Nations often worked in that scale. And so it's bringing us back to really think as First Nations have given us the gift of. The project Slow the Flow, and you'll see Sally unpack that, is really about bringing back the sponge effect that was in our waterways that over the time of colonization has been lost. And it is about valuing the farmers and farming practices in our landscapes that maybe incorporate local ecosystems and build biodiversity. And FEN is always really exploring how biodiversity can be enhanced in our across Australia and more thing. And I just, before I show you the video and pass over to David, I love that our Laudato Si journey aligns so closely with the AELA Green Prints and the journey to think about a new way of living and that Green Prints thinking. So our Laudato Si goals have been embedded there in the Green Prints journey. And Michelle, this is a challenge that we will just keep exploring this further. So I think without further ado, I will share the video. Very happy to answer any questions in the chat or answer questions at the end. But I'm now going to go to the Sisters of Mercy and share the amazing work that Sally is doing called Slow the Flow. And I will just get to the video. There it is. Sound is on. And here we go.
For the past few years in integral ecology, we've had a strategic plan where each year we are asked to focus on one practical on-the-ground restoration project. We started off with the Papua New Guinea Omug village project. We've also had the rainforest restoration project in Cairns. And now here in Central West New South Wales, we have an opportunity to engage with the community of Eugowra as it recovers from what they called a 1 in 5,000 year flood. This event happened in November 2022, and since then the community is starting to restore both the community of the humans but also the landscape. So we have an opportunity to be part of healing the community and healing the landscape at the same time. This gives you a sense of where Eugowra is actually located. If you go over the Blue Mountains from Sydney and then to Orange and west of Orange, and here I've highlighted the town of Eugowra and the Mandadgery Creek. And Mandadgery Creek is the one that was filled up very, very quickly, and the locals described it as a tsunami when it actually entered into all the buildings, the low-lying buildings of the town. You can see where it is in relation to Forbes and Parks. Today, this town is looking like a real building site. You can see all the temporary accommodation going up in the town. There's also a huge amount of caravans for people. This is the Catholic school, and you can see where the water got up to, and it's now all portables now. The office of the school was entirely gutted and is also a work site. So the idea is to relocate those people from that floodplain at a 100-year scale of disaster adaptation for Eugowra residents. And at the same time, look above that in the catchment, look above where the water was coming from, and see what we can do about restoring the natural function of the creek to buffer such disasters by slowing, sinking and spreading the water. And we hope this will be a best practice example to a whole lot of other places in Australia that will be impacted by disaster in the future. This is Therese Welsh, who showed me around her farm, and she's already doing these sorts of practices to sink, spread and slow the water through vegetation. And you can see very clearly what it's like when people do not vegetate and when the soil is left to wash away and the water moves very, very quickly and destructively. And luckily, some people like Therese have got onto the fact that we can actually make a difference through simply, in this case, fencing off sections of the creek. In this case, there's a lot of lamandra grasses coming back that are indestructible in those strong waters, and the Phragmites reeds as well, cleaning the water. These are very, very strong ways to slow, sink and spread water further up into the catchment. And there are examples available. So part of our plan is to hopefully engage locals in an education program to take them out to Malone Creek near Braidwood and to show them how these natural systems can be restored and have been done in the catchment of Malone Creek. So Australian landscape used to be full of these swampy meadows and chains of ponds. But what happened was, in time, these were separated out. These became degraded. The water underneath in drier times, it used to be able to continue underneath and was protected. And in wet times, that enabled the water to spread sideways. However, what we've been seeing is not exactly this picture. We've been seeing that in this case, in this picture, you can see that there's fewer trees, fewer vegetation, you can see more stock, and you can see that the carving out of the landscape is starting to occur. And we get these huge trenches where water just moves so quickly and damagingly and takes a lot of the trees with it, takes a lot of vegetation with it. The last remaining paddock trees that you can see in this picture have actually been washed away in Eugowra and the surrounding areas. So these are all the stakeholders that are involved in the project. We are also involved. We hope that other CRA members will be involved. and many of our partners in our fellowship program. The Mullion Institute are the scientists who will be doing the education work, and the Australian Landscape Science Institute as well. So the first step will be to engage with a series of landholders through land care and through the church and other community groups, and to enable the education of those landholders to see what's possible for landscape repair. The next part will be another educational event, and also there will be work done on the ground supported by our Mercy Friends and lots of other communities around that area in the diocese and the neighbouring diocese. I look forward to sharing this progress with you, and please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions or would like to get involved. Thank you.
All right, there we go. I'll just stop that again so that music doesn't come through.
That was fantastic, Sue. Thank you for sharing.
That's okay. And I will now answer any questions in the chat and pass over to David. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Sue. Over to you, David Lowe. Tell us all about bees. I'm excited. I love the bees.
There's quite a bit to say. Thanks so much, Sue. Such a pleasure to be with you all. And I'll be taking something of a different focus from a different perspective on understanding ecology through our faith traditions. I mentioned in the chat I'm joining from Darugin Guringai country in northern Sydney today. So I'm going to share my screen. So as Michelle mentioned in the introduction, I'm a member of two different but both very important to me organisations. One is the Australian Native Bee Association, that's interested in particularly the solitary and social bees that are native to Australia. So I'll be talking about those a little bit later. They're species of those. I keep a hive of Tetragonella carbonaria at our home, or it lives alongside us. And I'll be talking a bit about that particular species later. And I'm also a member of the North Shore Temple Emmanuel, which is a progressive Jewish congregation based in Chatswood in Sydney. And so I'll be talking a little bit about the traditions of bees and honey, and a little bit of etymology as well. So a bit of entomology and etymology today in the Jewish tradition. So begin with this word dvash, which is usually translated as honey. It's an interesting word, and I think it's interesting as we look at stingless bee honey a little bit later, or stingless bees later, because dvash means both the honey that is produced by honeybees, but also, and actually more commonly in terms that we're familiar with, like the land of milk and honey or the honey from the rock, it refers to fruit honey, so the syrup that might come from dates or figs. So I thought that was something that was worth starting with, just sort of questioning some of our assumptions, so that when we hear that expression honey, it doesn't necessarily mean honey from honeybees when we read it in the Tanakh and the Jewish Bible or in the Christian scriptures. In the Jewish calendar, we are in our busiest season of festivals. We've just come out of Rosh Hashanah, the beginning of the year, which celebrates the anniversary of creation, through Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, and we're about to enter Sukkot, which is sometimes translated as tabernacles, where we build, or booths, where we build little shelters and have an opportunity to connect to the world around us. Honey. Sorry, I just think there might be someone who's not on mute. Honey is an important ritual food in Rosh Hashanah. The first time it's mentioned is in this code from the Middle Ages, when the custom was written down, so it's at least several hundred years old, of dipping a piece of apple and also some challah in honey at the beginning of the meal, the beginning of the new year. So it's a good wish for sweetness. So there's lots of puns and allusions in Jewish traditions, and that one combines the scent of the apple that recalls creation with the honey and the concepts of richness and sweetness. And you can see the analogies with many other New Year's traditions in other cultures, and in fact in other Jewish traditions as well, that might be associated with the beginning of the year or hopes for new beginnings and so on. In one of the Psalms, there's this beautiful phrase that can be translated as the law of God is more desirable than gold, than much fine gold, sweeter than honey, than drippings of the comb, or sweeter than honey, the sweetest honey. And the idea there is then being drawn out. Well, what does this mean to say that Torah, that the religious law is as sweet as honey? And two interesting interpretations that I came across were, where does honey come from? How do we gather how do the bees gather the nectar for honey? And then what does that mean for us? So if we look at Torah, but we could interpret that, and other people could interpret that in lots of different ways in their life. How do you, perhaps in terms of your ethical principles? So one interpretation was that you gather meaning for your law and your way of life as far and wide as bees gather nectar. Another is the goodness and strength and power of honey or syrup, that just as honey infuses food with sweetness, Torah or your ethics, your principles infuse your actions and understanding with sweetness. I thought that it's interesting it's an important part of Jewish interpretation of the scriptures and the generations of interpretation, that apart from the immediate analogy that something is precious or fine, how else can we look at that meaning and think about it? So that gives you a sense of, I think, a little bit about the way that Jews interpret scripture, that there's often different layers of meaning, and that's reflected in the way that we learn through Talmud as well as Torah. Now I'm going to cut across to one of my other particular interests, the stingless bees. At this point, thank you, Michelle, for your beautiful opening and acknowledgement of country and of our relationship, for many of us as immigrants or descendants of immigrants, to the Indigenous peoples of this continent. I'd particularly like at this point to acknowledge the wisdom, the law and the traditions of Aboriginal peoples in respect of sugarbag, the native honey and the bees that produce it, and their great and deep and ongoing understanding of those different species, as well as the beautiful stories and culture that are associated with them. Worldwide, stingless bees are cousin groups, honeybees and bumblebees. There are approximately 550 species of stingless bees through the world in the tropical regions, contrasting with the only 6 species of honeybees that are found often in the more temperate regions. And then within Australia, there are approximately 11 species, and the one that's most frequently domesticated is shown in that picture. Its scientific name is Tetragonula carbonaria, and it has, that particular species constructs a very distinctive and beautiful spiral brood comb. You can also see to the side the pollen pots and honey pots, which are much larger, that the bees construct, and the nature of the way they make that hive also enables it to be domesticated, as well as the fact they're quite a placid species. One of the reasons why that's the most commonly domesticated is because their natural range extends from southeast Queensland down to just south of Sydney, so it also coincides with a large part of the Australian population. And they also are not so cranky, and they make a nice sized hive that's easy to keep. I got that picture from, sorry, I haven't included the attribution there, sugarbag.net, which is the informative business and website with lots of other links, that's run by Tim Hurd, who in many ways is one of the gurus of stingless beekeeping in Australia. So sugarbag.net is the beginning of your own journey into stingless beekeeping and understanding these beautiful creatures, if you'd like to learn more. And keeping in mind little bit then about the stingless bees. The last part that I'd like to talk about is an obscure allusion in the beginning of the 5th Psalm, where there's this word nihilot, which has a couple of etymologies attributed to it. Often it says to the nihilot, so these are thought to be, there are different words used for the different groups of musicians from the ancient temple. And this one's usually understood to mean the pipes or the wind instruments. And one common etymology is that it means the hollowed out instrument, so sort of like the word pipe. Another, I thought, rather lovely analogy was comparing that word nihilot to another word nihil, meaning the swarm, so that the sound of the wind instruments was analogous to the sound of a swarm of bees. And when I came across that, I reflected on my own experience living with a hive of stingless bees and how I find it a beautiful opportunity for observation and contemplation, watching the bees come and go, watching them arrive at their doorway with little knee baskets with resin or pollen on them of different colours from time to time, watching how they navigate around and past one another and in and out. And also this idea that the nihilot is the buzzing swarm, that even when it's a cold day and they're tucked inside and I might be a little worried about them, the common practice is to just rest your ear near the entrance to the hive and then hear the beautiful music of the hive, the quiet buzzing and the safe knowledge that the bees are actually safe and sound inside. So I'll be joining Sue and Anne and the others later talking a little bit more about Fen, but I'd just like to thank you all now for your time there. If you've got questions in the comments or later in the session, I'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you, David. Absolutely beautiful. And now we'll turn to Jessica. Are you ready to share?
Thank you, Michelle. Hello, everyone. I'm in the Blue Mountains on Durug and Gundungurra land. I live at the Brahma Kumaris Retreat Centre, which is a very beautiful piece of 136 acres, largely bush, rich biodiversity, hanging swamps, wallabies. We've even got kangaroos now that have come up from the plains. And we've got a creek going through the property that leads to the Blue Mountains National Park, which you probably know is a World Heritage Area. So we feel we've got a big responsibility to look after and care for this piece of land, which we do with a land care group, but also with our meditative gardening retreats. So I'm going to share a little bit about how, as an environmentalist, I changed once I became involved with the Brahma Kumaris, and then about how that led to the meditative gardening retreats. And I'll show a PowerPoint of some slides from those retreats. So I used to think I was the world's greatest greenie. I thought I did everything right, from not flying overseas to being vegetarian, recycling and everything. But when I went to the Brahma Kumaris to learn meditation, I learnt about thoughts and the power of thoughts and how they're an invisible energy that actually impacts everything. And they're the missing part of ecology. Like, ecology is all about animals and plants and the environment and how they interact and the relationship between them. But there's no mention of thoughts. And because we have them, don't we? We don't see them, but we can actually feel each other's thoughts. And, you can tell when someone's perhaps thinking critically of you, you'll pick that up. Or if you go into a place, you'll feel the energy of that place, like the energy of a church, the atmosphere. It's very different from, say, a primary school classroom or a pub. And why is that energy or that feeling different? It's because of the thoughts that have been going on in that room. And they're energy in us, and they dissipate out, move out from us into the atmosphere, into the room and out, and they affect nature. Perhaps some of you talk to your plants, or at least have heard about people who talk to their plants so that they grow and thrive better. We could actually just sit there thinking beautiful, loving thoughts to our plants, and that would work just as well, because plants don't have ears, but they do respond to the vibration, the energy of our thoughts and words. And when they're positive and loving and kind, benevolent, they respond well and grow. I mean, you've got to also water them and feed them. But if all that's taken care of, then the thoughts will be the added bonus. In fact, in India, the Brahma Kumaris, there's a lot of farmers in India who practice our meditation. And Delhi University in Delhi, has researched the difference between fields of vegetables growing where the farmers meditate in the fields and fields that don't have the meditation. They're doing organic growing in both. And they had a third plot that was chemical farming. And what they found is where it was organic plus meditation, there was greater richness in the soil, like the life in the soil was greater. The plants grew more and the produce was bigger. So definitely those plants were responding to the energy of the meditation. So when I learned this, I started looking at my thoughts. And I'll just tell you what Mr. Google says about thoughts in general rather than what my thoughts were like. But my thoughts were actually quite critical, quite negative. I used to be negative about people who didn't care for the environment, for example. And I wasn't aware that that was a problem. So Google says that we have about 50,000 thoughts a day. 80% of them are negative or wasteful. So a negative thought is like a critical thought, an angry thought. It's got that nasty energy, as opposed to a positive thought, which is loving and kind. And that's the sort of thought we do want to have. But there's also wasteful thinking, and that's thinking, worrying, or the anxious thoughts we have going over and over and over the same thing again and again, but not getting anywhere. Wastes our time, wastes our energy. But it's also not got a good vibration behind it because it's got that vibration of anxiety. So 80% of our thoughts are negative or wasteful. So that means we're having 40,000 of those a day. And now multiply that by, there's 8 billion people in the world. Well, I multiplied it by 6 billion because I think children are more positive and older people perhaps as well, elderly. So if you multiply it by 6 billion, we get 240,000 billion negative and wasteful thoughts a day on the planet. So really, that I think is an indication of or the reason behind the mess we see that the world is in now. Because our thinking is behind everything. You have a thought before you speak. You have a thought before you interact with someone or do something. So all our actions and our relationships, behind them, the foundation of them is how we're thinking. So I guess from that, I've been working not only on meditation, but also just checking my thoughts and changing them so that I think, I guess I've become more kind, more understanding of others, and not thinking that they've got to be the same as me, or that if they're not, that there's something wrong with them. So I've been more understanding and kind in that way. I'll share now my PowerPoint about the meditative gardening retreats. So just 1 minute while I see where the share button is. Here we go. This is just to give you a snapshot of how we meditate. We meditate with our eyes open, so we can actually garden while we meditate. But our mind is focused internally onto ourselves as a spiritual being. That's the soul. like a little star, a point of light behind the forehead. And it's our understanding that that's who we are, that we are this soul, this being of light, making the body move, and that all animals have a soul. They are all a point of light as well. And when we have that understanding, I think there's more compassion for everyone, and including all the animals, because we're all souls. It's like we're more equal when we look at ourselves as a soul rather than at the body, the species. So we teach this meditation in the meditative gardening retreats. Go on to the next slide. On our property, we've got a beautiful 100-year-old stone cottage, which is near the creek, and it's got an English garden. It's made out of local ironstone. And there's a pond which leads to the creek. So it's very important for us to make sure weeds from the garden don't end up spreading their seed into the creek, because the creek leads to the national park and the weeds will grow there and reduce the, outgrow the native plants in the national park if we let them get there. So that was the reason we started the gardening retreats. But we thought rather than have a working bee, we would actually teach meditation and combine it with the gardening. Because this is a practical way for people to, I guess, experience their inner peace while gardening, which is a peaceful thing to do. But if you learn it in a peaceful environment, then you can take it with you back to the city where a lot of people live and continue practicing that peaceful meditation while they're perhaps in a less peaceful environment, which is helpful. So here they are. There's the creek in the background, raking the leaves, collecting them for compost. Here we are removing a noxious weed, Monbretia. And just notice, this is me actually in the background here weeding, because I'll show you what happened to me just a few minutes after this photo was taken. Oops, there was this, a little bit more, and then there is this. So the kookaburra and the magpie were both very keen on getting the worms near me that I was, unearthing with the weeding. And the kookaburra decided to get at the closest vantage point to the worms, which was on my head. This is one of many, many examples where we found the animals at the retreat centre really feel safe with us. Like, I've never fed this kookaburra. I know it lives in the garden, but I've never really spoken to it. But it felt it could land on my head, and it sat there for some minutes until the photographer got too close. But I feel this demonstrates that when we're peaceful and our thoughts are peaceful, animals feel that and respond accordingly. If I've got a couple more, have I got time, Michelle, to share another story?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Another one is a friend who lives nearby who meditates here. He had a young bird caught in his garage, and it was flying high. It didn't know its way out of the garage. And he just thought to the bird, I'm going to get the ladder and I'm going to come up with my hand, and you're to jump on my hand and I'll take you outside. And so he got the ladder. And as he was reaching out his hand, he was just thinking, jump on my hand, I'll take you outside. The bird jumped on his hand. He walked down the ladder. He walked out of the garage into the garden, and he and the bird just looked at each other. And then he could hear the adults where they were, and he said, there's your parents. And they looked at him and flew off. Another quick story is we had a wallaby here. It got trapped, its leg got caught in wire that had fallen off a building. So we got a sheet, put the sheet over it. Two of us lay on either side of the wallaby with the sheet, holding the sheet down, while the third person got the wire off its leg, and it was struggling, wanted to get away. And then we called wires because the leg was a little bit hurt. And it took 40 minutes for wires to get there. So we knew it would take a while. So the four of us decided to meditate, and the wallaby was still under the sheet. So we were just silent the whole time meditating. And the two who were holding the wallaby down shared afterwards that, well, the wallaby actually just went totally still. It was struggling for a while, then it went just still. And they weren't even having to, they had their hands on it, but they could just feel it relax. And they weren't holding it down anymore, although the sheet was still there. And it just calmed down. After Wires came, she let it go because she said it would be fine. It jumped 20 meters away. It stopped, jumped around, and it looked at us all. We were all standing there looking at it. And it looked at us really for half a minute at least before it then turned around and jumped off. And we all had the same thought that it's thanking us. It was acknowledging what we'd done for it. There are a number of other stories like that where the animals here just really respond to the meditation and the calmness that's here. So it's a Brahma Kumari's belief that we've all lost touch with ourselves as these spiritual beings, and that if we want to connect again to our peace and behave peacefully and with benevolence, we have to get in touch again with that inner light that's the real us. And that's where our peace lies. That's our true religion, is to be a peaceful soul. And I guess that's what we're teaching with our meditative gardening retreats, as all our weekends, we teach that. But in particular, the meditative gardening retreat, we're teaching that connection between us and nature, that connection of our thoughts, and that's something just as important to be looking at and examining, as well as, you know, what we're consuming physically on the planet. So, yeah, thank you. I think that's all I'll share.
Thank you, Jessica. That was really beautiful and very thoughtful. I'm sure we're all reflecting now on our thoughts, but also how we engage with the living world around us. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Michelle.
And we'll come back. There's been some interesting questions for you, so we'll come back to them in the Q&A. And now it's my delight to introduce Leisha, who's also going to share with us. Thanks so much, Leisha.
Thanks, Michelle. And thank you, Jessica. I think I feel very peaceful now. And I just wanted to say to you and David both, I've been making a pollinator's paradise, I was calling it, like a little garden bed. I've had these seeds for ages and I just hadn't got them in the ground. And then we've had all this good rain up here. I'm in the Blue Mountains as well. And I thought this morning, I'm going to plant those seeds this morning before this. And I was out there and I was really talking to my seeds and being very gentle with them. So I hope they grow into something lovely. Yeah, anyway, that's not what I'm talking about. So I will just share my screen with you. Great. Yeah, so hi everyone, my name's Leisha, and I'm going to talk today about a program that I've been involved with since 2021, and it's the Catholic Mission Interfaith Encounters program. It's a program that we bring together young people from different faith backgrounds, and we do all this really cool stuff with them. Yeah, but before I talk about that, I wanted to start also by saying I'm here in the Blue Mountains on the land of the Darug and Gundungurra people, and just really want to honour that they're this sacred ground that I'm on, and acknowledge, you know, their strong connection to land and water and flora and fauna, and the strong connection they have with community and kinship, that all of us belong. So before I share about the interfaith program, I just want to give a bit of a story to my coming to an understanding of integral ecology. And it's only been like a fairly recent journey that I've been on, but it started in 2015 when I first heard about this document from Pope Francis called Laudato Si, which Sue mentioned earlier. And really, the idea of integral ecology is so much a part of what that amazing document is. And at that time, it was 2015, and I was studying a Bachelor of International Development Studies, and I was feeling quite hopeless for the world. I was, you know, seeing all these problems of what was happening, but feeling a bit like there wasn't any answers. There was just more questions. And I started working part-time for the Columban Institute and their Centre for Peace, Ecology and Justice. And I worked with Anne, who you can see there. And that's when I came across this network called the Faith Ecology Network. And it was really cool to get to meet people from all these other faith backgrounds. And I've been up to the Brahma Kumari Centre and the Jewish Food Faith Network. So it was just all this amazing stuff that I hadn't really come across, and it made me the ability to be active in these spaces really gave me a lot of hope. So I realized that, you know, the way to be hopeful about the world is to get doing something. Yeah, so you can see some photos there of when I was working with the Faith Ecology Network, and we had prayer vigils and like some community events with input from scientists and from faith backgrounds. So it was a good time. Since then, I'm still on this journey, and I now work for Catholic Mission, and Catholic Mission is an organisation that does predominantly fundraising for projects overseas with people that are really on the forefront of the climate crisis. So it's really important, and that's not my work. I'm not a fundraiser, but what is really important is that in all of our work that we really have this understanding, and we bring this ecological lens to how we think about what we do. And so my journey in the organisation has been trying to be the one to make sure that it's at the forefront of everything that we do. So we're still on that journey at Catholic Mission, but it's really great. Since last year, the organisation has committed to what we call our ecological action plan, and we're implementing some of the Laudato Si action platforms, things like Sue talked about earlier. So yeah, that's Catholic Mission. So Sue mentioned about integral ecology, and I've just recently finished studying what we called social ecology, but I think it really is integral ecology. So you can see there a couple of definitions of what social ecology is, but it is bringing that understanding the interconnectedness and interdependence of everything, and knowing that the way to make change is that we have to embrace all of that. And very much like Jessica says, we have to get in touch with our soul and our spiritual side of our beings if we want to have any hope of solving the problems of the world, I think. So I try and kind of bring this social ecology thinking to all of the work that I'm doing now, which is, yeah, it's nice. So here is the Interfaith Encounters program that I talked about. And like I said, it's a program that brings together young people from different faith backgrounds. Mostly we've been working with Catholic schools and Islamic schools, and we bring the students together and we run a series of events with them where they really get to make great friendships. We talk about celebrating difference and building better harmonious society. But yeah, mostly they just become really good friends afterwards. And even a lot of the teachers that we're involved with become friends as well. And we find out that they've been connecting outside of our program and helping each other when they're doing studies of religion. So the program has benefits beyond what we thought about. I'm going to share, I'm just going to stop sharing, and I'm going to share I'm going to share a video from the program, which will give you a bit of a snapshot, and then you'll be able to, then I'll talk a bit more about it. Where is my video gone? Okay. Yeah, sorry, I could see it lagging. I'm like, oh no. But that was from last year's program, which was really great. And then we've run the program again so far this year with another 6 schools. And I'm just going to go back in and share my presentation again. Yeah, so it's been really great. We've been able to kind of continue to co-develop and reimagine the program as we go, and we really try and bring a lot of creative sort of embodied practice into what we do with the students. And I've been trying to really bring, you know, an ecological understanding to our work as well. So this year when we ran the program, we started, rather than having last year, we always had plastic name tags for the students. This year we got these lovely pieces of timber, recycled pieces of timber discs, and we do this great activity at the very beginning where the students get to write their name on a piece of timber and decorate it. And we use it to talk about identity and, you know, how we're all coming from our own history and background and difference, and our uniqueness as humans, but also our interconnectedness. And we sort of, I put a bit of a spin on it, and we talk about, you know, about trees and the conditions that trees grow best under, not unlike us as humans as well. And we asked the students to maybe reflect on why they chose a piece of wood. Did it have particular something in the rings? Was there something really beautiful? Or was there, like my name tag has a little crack in it? And, you know, I think of it sometimes as we all have the scars that we may carry, but, you know, that's okay. That's part of who we are. So, and yeah, at the end of the program, the students keep their name tags, and we've done away with bits of plastic. So that was a good win for us.
Leisha, sorry to interrupt. If you just wanted to press the all screen, we're seeing the slides at the left. You might prefer to do the slideshow look, but it's up to you, Del.
Sorry, I am doing.
It's totally fine. Just leave it. It's totally fine, Del. Don't have to change it.
It's all right. Okay, so you're just thinking that's all right. Anyway, and yeah, through the program we do lots of stuff on lots of activities on identity and different stereotypes, bias, but on a lot on bringing them together as well, and helping them recognize, you know, that they may be different, but we have this commonality, and that we all share this wonder and awe for the planet, but also concern as young people. You know, they're really concerned about the climate crisis. So we help them, we give them a safe space that they can talk about many things, apart from just their faith, but, you know, their commonality as young people. Yeah, that's just a couple of photos of the students. They go to visit each other's places of worship, and we share meals together because, you know, hospitality and food is an important part of all of our lives. But coming to this understanding of the different foods that they may eat, and the significance of some foods, like David shared for us about the honey, but the significance in the Muslim faith when they're in Ramadan and at other times of year. Yeah, and at the end of the program this year, I mean in second term, when we finish with the 6 schools, we have one event where all the schools come together, and we really let the students lead that event, and it's a big time of celebration for them. And this time round we arranged so that each school gave each other's school a beautiful native plant. And we had a little card on it, and we had some lovely words, which I'm just going to read because I always forget what they were. What did I say on them? Sorry, lost my words. Oh yeah, sorry. Plant me somewhere so my roots can spread. And even though I'd written those cards, I kept forgetting what the words were. And I emailed one of the teachers from one of the Islamic schools, because I just had a feeling that she would have kept the card. And she definitely had. She said she had it on her desk because she just loved the words so much. And that school in Mount Druitt, where they don't have a lot of trees in their yard at all, they were really excited to have this tree, and they've planted it. So it's nice to know that those little things are kind of connecting with them. So I just want to wrap up by sort of saying why have I shared today about the Interfaith program? And it's the idea that, you know, when we come together as people from different faith communities or different cultures, that it's only in coming together that we're going to be able to solve some of the big major problems of the world. So it's really important that we do that. We have that opportunity to have these exchanges and strengthen our togetherness, and the different cultures and faiths. They bring such intergenerational wisdom, and that can help all of us have a greater understanding and love for the planet. And, you know, in our diversity is necessary, you know, it's wonderful. But like our unity in diversity, we have to realize that we sort of have that we're interconnected as humans, and have this unifying sense of wonder and awe and care and concern for our human and more than human family. So thank you, everyone. Just stop sharing.
Thank you. It's a wonderful program, and let's talk a bit more about that in the Q&A. Thank you so much, Leisha. I'm now going to hand over to Sue and David to have the final chat and to share. I think they're going to share the beautiful images for the sharing for biodiversity, but I'll leave that up to you.
Thanks, Michelle. And I'm going to leave the images up to David. He's going to share them. Our Faith and Ecology 10 Ways to Care. And just sharing that this is our, as a network of networks coming together to think about how we can instill a hope-filled future, and looking at the various ways we can care, and the shared across our network of networks. And I might just pass over to David the beautiful imagery, the creativity that these images were done by Brenna
Quinlan, thanks so much, Sue. So there's some program of work and some of the education work that Sue and others have been developing over some time. And as the Faith Ecology Network ran programs, mostly obviously through Zoom and so on, during the COVID period of seclusion and retreat and contemplation, we developed that into 10 principles or 10 ways that would then enable people to reflect and sorry, what are the 3 principles? Reflect, act, share and act.
So listen and learn,
and
unpacking what the ways to care means, reflect and contemplate, and act.
The act. So it's an interesting set of principles that then come through into these 10 ways. So how do you stand back and then contemplate a period of working out? And we've got a set of resources that are attached to the 10 ways that gives some examples of how you can take those 3 connected approaches and do that cycle then of, after your action, then again begin the cycle of reflection. And so I guess reinvigorate and also improve, but maybe reconsider or adapt the approaches that you've taken. And then that 3-part approach goes through into these 10 ways. We developed it as a set of principles, and then we commissioned Brenna Quinlan, who's an artist and also a permaculturist, to represent those in an engaging way, in a particularly engaging style, as a set of images that then can be used as stimulus materials or as inspirational images, or in other materials that faith groups and other community groups might use to choose 1 or 2 or 3 or more of the 10 ways for particular actions or activities. So I'll just quickly run through them. So at the top, learning from the wisdom of the elders. You can see a little yarning circle under a tree. The elders might be from our Indigenous brothers and sisters, or it might be within other community groups and other sources of wisdom as well. Growing in the sense of place. Where are you? What do you do? What do you do there? Learning from the scientists with these. This is one of my favourites. Obviously, I gave my little bee talk before with these little citizen scientists investigating a blue-banded bee. But then some of them are more, I guess, activist oriented. So joining your local groups, becoming eco-citizens, activities exactly like this today. Bringing nature into worship and gatherings is a really interesting and sometimes challenging one. How do we re-engage, and often liturgies or even more dull procedures become very ossified, very highly structured. People are reluctant to change them, but there are often opportunities in small spaces where we can start to bring a bit more of our ecological consciousness to bear. Observing a seasonal calendar, so both the seasons in the way, for crops, for maybe our smaller, larger scale gardening, but also, again, that can tie back, I think, in important ways to traditional wisdom and understanding that in many parts of Australia, the 4 seasons is just not right. Maybe there are 2 seasons or 6 seasons or 8 seasons, and learning those and introducing that awareness is a good way to reset our perspective. So some more of the activist principles. How do we align? How do we work together? And then coming back again to I love this one, the grow in the wonder of nature, with these 2 tiny people in this beautiful, wonderful world, being there, being present, and seeing their place, but not they're in charge of place. They're small alongside place in the natural world. And then finally, again, not unlike what we've been doing today, sharing successes, talking about our activities, joining together with old and new friends to discuss what we do to hopefully inspire or give new ideas to people in the many different forums that are available to us today. So I hope that gives you a sense of the spirit behind the 10 ways, and that the Faith Ecology Network has developed those resources, both written resources and also these graphics, to that your groups might be interested to use. And if you are interested to use them, to reach out to us through the website so that we could discuss something that you could make from it.
Thanks, David. And I might just add that with our journey evolving with our 10 ways, we're hoping that a reflection guide might be developed. And for us in the season of creation at the moment, that might be something to look forward to as we head into Lent as something. But schools and care groups and just that way of thinking that comes from our faith traditions, hopefully is a resource that we can share more widely. And it does so link with green prints again, Michelle. There are so many interconnectedness with what Ayla is doing with green prints and our FEN 10 ways to care. So I just
I couldn't agree more.
With that.
And I'm looking at those beautiful drawings. I love Brenna Quinlan's work. We're going to be revising the Ayla website over the summer, and we're hoping to be able to feature a lot of the groups we work with much more prominently. And this poster will definitely be, with your permission, promoted and connected to your websites. And for everyone who's interested, I've just popped in the chat where the link is so that you can find more info about 10 Ways to Care and the beautiful poster. So, and thank you for mentioning green prints. We appreciate you connecting that to our own work. That's great. So we can go to a bit of some questions if you'd like to. We've got a couple of questions in the chat and a few more may bubble up. We've got about 15 minutes, so that'll be great. I'm just going to move through a couple of questions that were for particular speakers. So I think, Sue, when you were talking about slow the flow, a question came through saying, what is Bishop Michael McKenna's role in the Slow the Flow project? I know him as he is on the board of the New South Wales Ecumenical Council, and I didn't know about this Laudato Si project. That question's from, I hope I'm saying your name wrong, Vice. So
I'll share just a little bit quickly, because I know that is probably a personal question, and I did reply to Weiss. And yes, you would hope that Bishop Michael knows, but this has actually, the Eugowra conversation and journey has started a Laudato Si team in the diocese, and Father Paul Duckett, I might have got that wrong, is really leading that, and that conversation with what church and diocese can do is exciting. For us in very, very heartwarming. And a really beautiful project has also blossomed in Blaney, where an old parish building has been taken over for Sally to really immerse herself in country and in the diocese. So Bishop Michael might not know everything, but hopefully he is aware that this is an evolving thing. So I hope that answers the question.
Thank you. Nice to see those connections popping up online as well. There was a lovely comment for David from Cindy. She says, many thanks to David for pointing out the uses of honey in the, I'm hoping I'm saying this right, David, in the Tanaka, especially like the linking of the music of happy bees with human peace and contentment. And we've got a huge question from Michelle. So brace yourselves. This is a big one, I think. Maybe it's a small one for you. Jessica, what is a soul? I figured that's a short answer or a 1 week answer, whatever you choose.
It's a short answer, but it takes more than a week to remember you are a soul. So a soul is who we are. So it's our understanding we're not a body. The body is a costume we're wearing, and I am the soul inside the body, behind the forehead, where Indians put that little red dot. The women, married women. And the soul is energy, living energy, spiritual energy, invisible, but a point of light. So like a star, but not a star is made of physical elements, but this is this energy. But it's the soul that thinks. The body doesn't think. The soul thinks, has an intellect, has a personality. And that is always ours. We're eternal. Can't kill a soul, but the body does become old. So in a nutshell, that's our understanding of the soul, and that every living thing, every animal, not a plant, but animals, have a soul. But we've all got different intellects, different personalities.
Thank you, Jessica. You've done well to explain that succinctly and beautifully. Did anyone else? I know that many of you are from different faith backgrounds. Did you want to add to that what you think a soul is, or how you express what a soul is in your background?
Just putting a link in the chat for people who are interested, Michelle, to a very good resource for understanding from different perspectives, Jewish understandings of many aspects of the world. And that's a short article that gives links to some of the different Jewish concepts of soul. There are different physical and spiritual emanations of soul, I would say, if I was going to express it very simply. So if people want to have a look at that, they can read that at their time and leisure. It also explains it better than I could.
Yeah, I know some of these big issues are complex. Yes, Anne, please share.
I was just going to say, I think the joy of being part of a Faith Ecology Network is that it brings together all of these different beliefs and faith traditions around our common interest in what it means to be human in relation to all of other life. And so I think there's potential in so many other places for interfaith dialogue at a more theological level. in the context of the voice referendum at the moment, recently I was in Yagle country up on the Clarence River with my dear friend Lenore Parker, who's a Yagle matriarch and also an Anglican priest. And she was talking about the issues around the yes voice, but she said something very deep for me. Don't forget that this is all about the spirit. And for her, she was thinking about the great spirit that lies in this land. So I'm wondering if what Jessica's expressing is something that we might find in common across all of us in this land we're in, that is about the spirit that is drawing us all together in this conversation. So thank you.
I was on mute for a change. Thank you, Anne. That's lovely. And just another comment there. Mitzi has said, what is the difference between soul and spirit? Or are they interchangeable? And perhaps, Anne, you might have just touched on that a little. Yeah, and Jessica's written in the chat, they're the same. Lovely, lovely, lovely. And as someone who didn't grow up with a strong faith that could be described in modern or ancient terms, I guess I find these discussions about the spirit and the soul so deep and rewarding, even though I don't have a framework to connect that to. As someone who loves the living world and all of life around us, when I hear others in other faith groups talk about aspects of the spirit and the soul, I always feel this deep comfort. There's so much more than just the material world. And I often think of myself as a product of a sort of Western industrialized society that, despite its best efforts to educate me into just material life and consumption, my mind, my spirit, my soul, my body, everything still craves this discussion and this connection and these ideas and feelings about something so much more. So to people who have a strong faith, that might sound almost naive, but I think I'm almost living proof that even someone raised in a secular way, deeply ingrained initially in Western rational education, immediately after finishing university, threw myself into exploring and learning and unlearning all these other ways of existing, thinking and feeling. So it's a great comfort for someone like me to listen to others, particularly who know I feel a lot more about their own faith. It's just lovely. Now, let me just share a comment from Paul. It's a lovely comment. I've shortened it a little bit. Paul says, it seems the failure to recognize the role of consciousness in our world, the fundamental role, underlies much of the failure to address the climate and ecological catastrophe that's unfolding around us. Our actions, individually and collectively, are driven by our minds, consciously or unconsciously. And we and the world are not merely collections of material atoms or physical forces. And at the end, he says, our environmental campaigning and also our legal approaches should account for this fundamentally significant dimension of reality. And I think I've actually kind of commented myself about that the idea that there is so much more than just the material and the structural and the institutional stuff that we need to engage with. But what are your thoughts, everybody in the group? David, did you want to share?
Yeah, so Anne touched on this as well, some of the where is the common concern and what do we get out of and what do we have the opportunity to learn through discussions like this and in activities like the activities that FEN runs. But I think there's something, whatever your traditions are, faith traditions or otherwise, but one of the strengths of faith traditions is having a sense of time and place so that you will come together as a community at certain times, year on year, week on week, in places, and often saying the same prayers or similar prayers or other forms of sharing wisdom, however that might be in whichever tradition. And that practice of contemplation and of reconnection is in itself very valuable because it helps recenter us. And then the step beyond that is how do you reintegrate that centering with the world around us? So having those, particularly in the annual cycle, maybe recalling festivals that are actually connected to harvest festivals and times and places in the year in a meaningful way, that they're not just historical or abstract, that they often also reflect our place in and as part of the world.
Lovely. Thank you, David. I know I hear a lot of Indigenous elders and friends that I work with talking about the lack of ritual in our modern culture, that lack of repetition that helps us recenter. So that's a lovely comment. Sue.
I was just wanting to share that notion of consciousness. And I think it is a really good place for us to reflect a little bit. And I wanted to just share a beautiful wisdom elder of ours, Christian brother Kevin MacDonald, who is so beautiful, and his sharing about place and having an ecological conversion with place. But he shares that for us on this journey to look after our world, we often have an environmental consciousness, and which is good. But if we can explore having an ecological consciousness, and that explores what we've been adding in here, that spirit, that soul, that heart, that connection to the spirit and country, is the consciousness or the ecological conversion that is also needed. And so I just wanted to share that there is a really good thinking to be done about raising our consciousness and celebrating environmental consciousness, but maybe aiming for ecological or that consciousness of country. So I'll just leave that with you all.
Lovely. Anne, yes.
I was hoping that some of the people who are watching us here might contribute as well. But I'd just like to think about something that changed my whole worldview. And I grew up in the bush, never had a chance to learn science. And I realised that growing up in my Irish Catholic faith tradition, that I hadn't asked scientific questions. And I realised that I had a particular cosmological worldview that had been handed on through text, and through faith practice, that kind of had outgrown, been limited by my lack of scientific understanding. And I think of a lot of our Western faith traditions have been limited by our limited cosmic understanding, and accepting the idea of evolution and where we've all evolved and come from, and learning that we humans are part of this much bigger evolutionary story, and realising who we are as physical beings in relation to all the rest of everything, changes our whole cosmological understanding and our cosmic worldview. And this is part of this ecological consciousness changing and conversion that needs to come through many of our Western faith traditions, and accepting of the science and what science is teaching us, and our relation as humans to all of everything.
Michelle, can I just
connect
what Anne was just saying to a question in the comments from Asma, which was, do plants have a soul? And I think that for me, part of the answer there is that we have space in our faith traditions to treat other living things with respect, whether they're plants, animals, fungi, bacteria, whatever it might be, to acknowledge their place. And building on what Anne just said, that we share a common heritage as living things on this planet, that we are all, in a sense, brothers and sisters made of the same DNA, whatever our scale and size, whether we're unicellular, multicellular, complex organisms capable of having discussions like this, or capable of covering half a continent with our mycorrhizal fungi and our forests, whatever we might be. And so in that sense, the idea of soul is a very human connection concept, but the idea of what it might be to be one of the many living things that depend and interdependent on this planet is something that we can take from the sciences and then reintegrate in our faith and philosophical traditions.
I think that's wonderful. And to reflect on what Anne just said, and Anne, I have been feeding questions in from the chat. It's just a bit difficult with a large group to have an open discussion. We have tried them in the past. Normally we have to go into breakout groups. So today we only had the time for some facilitated questions and answers, but we can certainly have sessions in future where online folks can have a chat. But yeah, Anne, I actually really think your comments are very thought-provoking. You're saying you grew up in a faith tradition and you feel that it would have been enriched by more science. A lot of people say that we've had too much science and it will be enriched by more faith. So there's obviously a calling there to have lots more conversations and interconnections of ideas. And David, I love the way you handled that question about a plant and a soul. As a secular person who thinks absolutely everything's alive, I would say if I have a soul, a plant has a soul. But I do know that different faith groups, depending on who you speak to, may have different perspectives. So look, we're actually out of time. I think we could probably all continue these beautiful discussions for many hours, but let's respect the time that we set aside for today and start to wrap up just a little bit. What I'd love to say is a huge thank you to everybody. Really grateful for the work that Anne and Sue and Leisha and David and Jessica have put together to share with us today. It's been really lovely and really rich, and I'm looking forward to hosting many more conversations from the work you're all doing into our ALA space. I'd also like to thank all of you for joining us for 90 minutes. That's really lovely. Someone did actually ask a final question here about to Jessica about your meditative gardening retreat. She's asked, can we get this online? And it says Anne from Bacolod in the Philippines.
Oh,
so
no, we're not doing it online. Down in that garden, there's no internet access. So unfortunately, not that particular retreat. We do have a lot of things online, meditation, but if you look up Brahma Kumaris, you'll find them in the Philippines as well, but not that particular retreat.
Yeah. Okay, thank you for answering that question. And thank you, Grace. I can see some people in the background. So hello, everyone. Lovely to see a group of people, as well as all of you in your own homes and places. And so before I finish the thank yous, Mitzi has asked a very important question. How do I get onto your email list for future webinars? So what I'll do in a moment is I'll put in the chat the ALA email list. You can find us and sign up to us on the website. And the FEN, the Faith Ecology Network, you can sign up to their email list too, I think, on their website. So we'll make sure we provide all that information. We'll also be sending you all an email when the recording of this webinar is available, and that will enable you to reconnect with us and perhaps rewatch the video or share with your networks. Anne, did you want to add?
Yes, I just wanted to say a big thank you to you, Michelle, on behalf of FEN. We're a network of networks, as Sue mentioned. We have absolutely no funding. We're all volunteers. We're just networks. But I would like to acknowledge the Sisters of Good Samaritan, who actually are our auspicing body and enable us with human services and those sorts of things. And I'd also like to acknowledge all the other FEN members who are part of this webinar. It's the thing that excites me about FEN is this diversity of people that we're able to get together. And I think it's crucial. Neil Davidson described us as a crucial social network. And I think we really need to grow this. So I'm grateful for your support, everybody. And in the words of Jeff Fennick, as Jessica described it, I love yous all.
Well, I can't beat that as a closing remark. I think that's fantastic. I agree with you, Anne. It's wonderful to have these conversations. We should have much, much more of them. And I look forward to collaborating with you all again in the future. But thank you so much for your time today and your beautiful comments and reflections. Have a lovely afternoon, everyone. I'm going to go and have my lunch out in my garden and contemplate the plants that I have brought into my garden. And I hope they love me as much as I love them. We'll go and see. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you again soon.
Thanks, Michelle. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone.
See you.
Thanks,
Bye.
Michelle.
Bye.
Bye.